This land is your land, this land is my land, from California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me.
Hello, I'm John Grom, and this is the 29th Right and Left Discussion Forum. The purpose of our discussion forum is to show that rational people can disagree without being disagreeable. We believe that our free, self-governing society requires an open exchange of ideas. That can only happen when we have mutual respect for each other's opinions and viewpoints. Today's topic, special interest influence over government, is a popular debate topic because nearly every citizen is a member of one special interest group or another, and that it is often considered that one person's right is another person's undeserved favoritism. Our panel weighing in on this topic today, beginning on my left, is Bryan Laubaugh. Bryan is president of R&B Financial Services. On his left is Tim Burns, manager of adult services at the Twinsburg Public Library. On his left is Jerry Ritzman, vice president and partner of Ritzman Natural Health Pharmacies. And last is Patty Haskins, Wadsworth City Councilor. I've never called you a counselor before, but I saw somebody call you that in the paper, so that's
yes.
We don't stumble over councilwoman. And so anyway, Bryan, with government regulating and influencing the affairs of so-called special interest groups like business, environmental groups, unions, various associations, is it natural for them then to try to influence and regulate government?
Well, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending upon which side of the issue you are on this, it's here to stay. The ability of an individual group to somehow curry favor or to influence the government on particular points of legislation or how they do business, it's been with us for, I think, probably since the inception of the union. So it's nothing new. It's just that it's become somewhat of a firebrand, if you will. When you start dealing with elections and things of that nature, people are they're quick to point out about different conservative, organizations that have lobbyists. But if you look, you'll see that the money is pretty well spread around. Unions, teachers' unions, different groups, associations. I belong to several associations. The financial services industry has lobbyists that lobby Washington over different rules and regulations. So one thing that probably could stand a little tune-up is the disclosure. I think that there needs to be a little more effort made to determine where the money's coming from. And when you read stories of particular groups of people, foreign interests that lobby our government, that becomes a concern. But you get into the weeds with conflicts of interest. When you have people that work for the government lobbying the government for particular issues, I think all those things, if they were disclosed, if there was a lot of transparency, I really don't think you can do anything to do away with lobbying. They have lobbyists that lobby for the lobbyists. So, they have their own association.
I didn't know that.
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah. It's quite a thriving industry. And I think probably, a third of the business down in Washington, D.C. is lobbyists. People that, have particular interests. They have the ear of their legislator or several, and, they want those opinions known.
There are 22,000 registered lobbyists in Washington.
Mm-hmm. And they do a lot of business. They do a lot of business with the government. And I'm interested in hearing what the panel has to say, because this is an issue that is really hard to get a handle on. You talk about just campaign finance reform. I think that's kind of a start, but lobbyists have been with us for a long, long time, and that's, you know, sadly, or the way the system has been designed to get things done at times, to represent your views and opinions. So,
Tim, let me ask you this question. When you think about the fact that we are a self-governed country, and that from the very, very beginning, we have a government that governs only with the permission of the governed, and that the government is increasingly regulating and controlling the citizens, owners of businesses, and various groups are all citizens. And that, do you think it's getting out of hand where now we are not being governed by the consent of the governed?
Well, I would say probably it's not a new thing. I think, like Bryan mentioned, it goes right back to the very beginning, where you had special interest groups or factions, as they were called, you know, when the Constitution was being debated. And I think that they have always been the ones who have drafted the legislation. They have always been the ones who have encouraged certain legislators to vote a certain way. And so it's been there for the beginning. I was going back trying to find out the origins of all of this. And James Madison, when he was writing in the papers, you know, the Federalist Papers, and saying that his idea was, for a central government that had power, was that the bigger it was, the more likely it would be that these factions would offset each other and therefore balance. And in a way, I think that has sort of worked, you know. But what's happened now is that I think with all kinds of technological and informational things, it's heightened it and sped it all up, so that you basically now get lobbyists who basically just run the entire show, and there's, like Bryan said, there's no real transparency. But what I was surprised is how difficult that is to do. It's not because of the Constitution and because of what we do. There was a debate over this free speech. Is it a principle of harm or a principle of offense? So you can take, you know, harm means like physical harm. It actually does physical harm. We have a pretty good handle on that. Can't yell fire in a crowded, you know, theater. But this concept of offense gets real sticky because that, and it's not in the law that says that, it's just theories and jurists that do. My question about this whole thing is like, do we believe that lobbyists buy the votes? I mean, through their writing the legislation, making it easier for a legislator, by giving them money to run for. I mean, is that something that we understand is true? Because I believe it's true in a way. Otherwise, why would they give them money? So is that, and that's illegal, by the way. You're not allowed to buy votes. But it's, so should we do that? And that's where you get to this transparency. Who's giving the money? Well, then you sort of see how the legislation's moving. But it's I was very surprised. I had a very clear-cut understanding until you really delve into it, at how complex it is.
Well, when you think back to the Philadelphia Constitutional Convention, the special interest that really won out was slavery. We would not have had a union without the consent to slavery. Jerry, what are your thoughts on this topic?
Well, lobbyists serve a positive function, I think. And if you're a legislator, whether in the state government or the federal government, you have a lot of things under consideration when you're considering legislation. I just had an experience down at the Ohio Senate at a committee hearing there. And the purpose that I was asked to appear there was to explain how a particular bill, Senate bill, would affect patients, how it would affect the profession of pharmacy, how it would affect the daily operation and the daily activities of a patient and their family who were picking up prescriptions. And so I wasn't a registered lobbyist, but went on behalf of a state association, and I think it was an educational process, and I was even able to follow up on a one-on-one with our state senator from Medina. And so we serve a function because particularly with term limits, legislators are in there for a limited period of time, and I think by the time that they're term limited out, they're just getting to figure out the whole situation. So lobbyists do serve a function. For campaign finance, every 5 to 7 or 10 years we get a new campaign finance law that comes out, and the guys that write the laws are the guys that find the loopholes, it seems. And so I would be a minimalist on campaign finance laws, but would say we need total openness on who is contributing. What's the thing now where the community groups can contribute and not have to tell who contributed to them, and they're financing all the ads and so forth. So I would say total openness as
By
to
a community group, do you mean a CPAC?
No, yeah, the CPAC. Yeah,
Okay.
Those groups that are they can contribute or advertise and not really tell who contributed to them.
Yeah.
Or they can give to a campaign. And I forget the technicalities there, but we need openness there to totally say, who's financing this. But I think lobbyists serve a purpose. Mm-hmm. Legislators are all human. They're going to have ones they like, one they don't like. Depends on what type of legal favors that they give them as far as dinners mm-hmm. or where they take them to lobby and that type of thing. I'm thinking they're going to be influenced by it, but hopefully mm-hmm. we're electing people with some degree of integrity.
Mm-hmm. Patty, what are your thoughts?
A lot, actually. Yeah, I agree with Jerry in that I think there is a purpose for lobbying, in as much as it provides information to the legislators that they may not be aware of about certain issues. It also allows, as opposed to just the one man or woman speaking to the group, the lobbyist that is hired to represent a large group gives a better impression possibly to that legislator and getting their opinion put across. That being said, the problem always is when there's too much money involved in something, there is always the chance for corruption. And there is so much money involved in the lobbying organization because many organizations, companies, don't lobby for themselves. They hire lobbyist firms to hire for them, which ups the cost. I know I saw that the largest lobbying organization is actually the Financial Insurance Group, and they spend over $400 billion. That's just lobbying. That's not counting anything else.
Is that with an M or a B? 400 million or 400
billion?
Billion with a B.
Yes,
wow.
Over 400 billion. I'm sorry, over 4 billion. I
4 billion.
dumped it up a little much.
I thought my dues were going to go up.
And the health industry was after that at 4 billion. And then some things like communication, transportation, labor, I was surprised, was 12th on the list, but it's still 427 million this time. So, but that's still 1/10. That's a great deal of money to go in, and that's not counting the contributions that are made through PACs. A lobbyist cannot give money. Matter of fact, they can't even give a gift over $5 to a legislator, whether it be state, federal, local. But they can through their PAC organization. So while they're doing all of that, this money is also coming in through the PAC organization, and there's this ability for corruption, that you have. And we've had scandals involving, Jack Abramoff, and there were 20 others arrested at the same time he was, and that was for influence peddling. I also have concern for foreign companies because they can come in, hire the lobbying firm, they can make the donation through a PAC, money now, get the money donated, have the lobbying firm then make their case for their issues. There are some concerns with this though, because it's been said that because the lobbyists are in there working on these single issues, maybe it's a a debit card fee or something, that the legislature is ignoring some major issues like Social Security, deficit reduction, global warming, these types of issues, which may not have as strong of a lobbying unit working with them. The other concern I have is the number of people that are in the legislature and staffers that then, after they go back to private life, become lobbyists. Those figures amazed me. I mean, it was something like 360 people in the last 10 years of the ones that have retired have returned to either become a lobbyist or become an inactive member in there. So the figure of 2,500 staffers in the last 10 years that have gone back to get $1 million jobs working for a lobbying company. And you wonder, these could be very ethical transitions, but there's always that thought in your mind, well, was that senator or that congressman making a decision for the benefit of that lobbying group so that they could get $1 million position when they went back to the private life? And being a tad bit cynical, you have to wonder, and this is both parties. This is something where the right and left really doesn't make a difference, because the lobbying groups tend to be party neutral. They go to whichever party's in power and will lobby in the same way, shape, and form to every one of them.
They stay in Washington, they just move into a bigger house.
I'll tell you, it was funny how many there are, and I was in Washington, D.C., not as, Bryan was just there, but a few years ago, and I swear 9 out of 10 people were wearing a black suit. This is male and female. They are the lobbyists, and they are everywhere when you go into Congress. So
I thought it was kind of interesting that apparently big time organizations like General Motors or GE or NRA or something, they have more than one lobbying group working for them, because there are 22,000 registered lobbyists in Washington, and between them they have 12,000 clients.
I think I saw where there's really only like dozens that are the large groups. Well, the thing is too, though, is they pool and hire the lobbying firm. Each individual company doesn't hire their own lobbyists. They pool them together for sometimes actually interests that are opposing one another.
I'm going to ask you a question. Where did you find your information about the hierarchy of giving?
I don't remember the website, but I can't remember the source of it, to be honest with you.
Well, I had trouble finding it that wasn't slanted one way or another, because there's so many ways of assembling that data. And
this was just based on data on money that they were spending on lobbying, and it didn't surprise me when I looked at the list. Agriculture was in there, defense was in there, construction, energy and natural resources was number 5. Now, of course, that could be both environmental and the energy companies. I expected them to be higher. Finance didn't surprise me because of the amount of being number 1, because of the amount of lobbying that's been done on behalf of Wall Street in the last few years. That's really gone up, and because that was the hot topic too. So
one of the problems is that the laws are so complex that there could be a provision in a law that affects a group of people specifically and could, in essence, put them out of business. You look at we've discussed the Affordable Care Act before. There are parts of that law that affect specific groups that maybe unintentionally or intentionally were put into the law to tighten a loophole or do whatever, but when it affects so many businesses and so many people, healthcare, pharmacy, nurses, surgeons, doctors, the American Medical Association, you go down and you look and you say, okay, here's this massive law that comes out, and all of a sudden when they roll it out, they realize, wow, we didn't know it was going to affect this particular group and be a detriment to them. And so, for instance, with the finance, we've had 2 large bills come out, over the last 5 or 6 years, Sarbanes-Oxley and Dodd-Frank. There are parts of those bills that everybody feels You know, when you go to the ATM and there's that fee, you know, there's that, so these laws are so complex that, and whether the lobbyists, you know, have had a part in that or not, you know, maybe
think
they
they
have.
have.
But they need those special interests like Jerry to go down and say, here's what you've done with this law. Here's what maybe the unintended consequence was, and here's what needs to be fixed. And that's the role of lobbyists.
And John, you mentioned, you know, about are we being governed, self-governed, or are we getting governed by the bureaucrats?
Yeah.
Is that kind of what you implied?
Yes.
You know, there's a balance there too, because if we write things into law, you know, and it's not right, as Bryan mentions, or it's unintended, it takes an act of Congress to get it changed, right?
Yeah.
But whereas if it is, the law is written somewhat broadly and given over to the agency, the regulators, that can be changed more quickly. And so in some of the issues that we've been dealing with, my encouragement to the senators is look, you know, don't write too much into the law. Let the medical board and the pharmacy board and the nursing board come up with the workable solutions to it. If it doesn't work, they can change it by a rules revision. So, you know, and we sometimes complain, well, you know, we're getting legislated by the EPA or the whomever, you know, that these non-legislative people are controlling our lives.
Yes.
Well, there's a balance there too. It's a tough balance.
Well, Bryan pointed out this is a very complex, complicated thing. Now, what is the average voter supposed to do? When you go to the polling place, you don't really, most voters don't really know who's contributing to the people that you're voting for. And even trying to get on the internet and find out, you have a set of figures that are very, very different from what I was able to find from an organization called opensecrets.org. And what they listed was the organizations that contributed the most money to political campaigns between 1989 and this year.
Okay.
And it was very different. The very top organization, now you're talking billions of dollars. I don't know whether that's for all of history or
No, that's
last
like
year.
I think it was up till 2010, and it was like for 10 years or something.
10 years.
Yeah.
The 1989 to 2014, the number one organization donating to lobbying groups and to politicians is something called Act Blue. Do you have any idea what that is?
No.
It's an organization of a Democrat organization that collects money from a lot of people, individual contributors, put it all into one pot, and then deliver it to...
Like during the Obama campaign when he combined all of those individual ones, or... No?
No, I'm not...
No, not even...
No, this is, the description was, this is an organization that accepts donations from a lot of Democrats, and then they give to Democrat causes. They were number one on the list with 97 million between 89 and this year. I mean, that's a lot. Listen,
Yeah.
And it was 99% of the money went to Democrats. There was another organization that was 21st on the list called Emily's List. Now, I never heard of Emily's List. This is an organization that accepts donations and contributes to pro-choice female Democrat candidates. And that's all they contribute to.
These numbers were not, did not include political contributions. This was just
Payments to lobbyists.
to lobbyists.
Yeah.
Exactly, which is,
Yeah.
because that has to be, the donations to campaigns has to be totally separate.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was interesting. I just looked at the top 50 in any kind of detail at all. And of the top 50 organizations donating to campaigns, 20 of them are corporations. 17 of them are unions. The rest of them are associations of one kind or another. But the fact is that it's very, very difficult to find out how much money is being, in what way are our legislators, our elected officials being influenced? That's what we want to know.
Right.
Who is influencing them and in what way? We all take it on faith that the corn producers in Iowa had a lot of influence over biofuels because it raises the price of corn and they make an awful lot of money doing that. But how
This
many
is
other
where
things?
transparency, I think that could be a main topic when you look at this, is like Jerry mentioned and Patty, and if we just know
Who's doing it?
who's doing it and to what degree and to what extent, I mean, that would probably answer a lot of questions. It's quite a spider web, if you will.
Do you think that that a lot of voters even care? I mean, when I talk to people that vote for folks because they're nice to their dog, or they seem to be a good family
Not nice to
person.
their dog.
I would
we
like
can
to
talk about
think
educating
they're-
the voter.
I would like to think that people are educated voters. I'm sure not all of them are. But that's part of our country that makes it great, that everyone does have that right to make that decision based upon their own opinions for whatever reason, whether we agree with it or not.
Yeah.
So
I don't have as much trouble with, say, a legislator who has an avowed point of view, whether I agree with it or not, and then is supported by people who share that belief. That's different than a legislator who's basically a blank slate, and whoever gives them the most money or her the most money then votes that direction. So that seems, that to me, it's like, well, they're giving them money for something. So are they buying it? Are they, you say influencing. One of the things I came across was because we have a diverse and a staggered kind of government, according to Robert Dahl, who is a critic of Madison and the large government thing. He says it lends itself to change, delay, slow down, damper, and obstruct the majority. The minority can do that. Now, the minority is anybody, because majority in this country is very difficult. So, and he says what Madison prevents is not the factions able to balance each other. They are able to stop action, which is what we have now. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Not meaning to speak for the whole panel, but it sounds like we're more or less in agreement that people do have a right to influence government. And that government does have a right to control our lives, and we try to limit how much they control them, I think. But thank you very much for the conversation. It was a good discussion, and I would like to leave everybody with this quote from George Washington. "The marvel of all history is the patience with which men and women submit to burdens unnecessarily laid upon them by their government." Think about that for a moment, and thank you very much for joining us.